Both the National Super Alliance, NASA, and Jubilee sides have dismissed suggestions by the church leadership in Kenya for an expanded executive to accommodate the opposition. Just hours after the National Council of Churches of Kenya suggested the way out of the current political crisis in Kenya, both sides admitted that there is need for dialogue, but they insist there will be no talks about power sharing. And as our political reporter Mrimi Mwangi reports, Jubilee says no dialogue before Uhuru's swearing in.
As he received the victory certificate from the electoral body's chairman, Wafula Chebukati, President Uhuru Kenyatta seemingly knew too well that it was not yet Uhuru in his race back to State House.
As to my agenda going forward, I will discuss once the processes are over. I am not going to jump the gun.
But with the country sharply divided between Jubilee supporters celebrating Kenyatta's re-election, and opposition leader Raila Odinga's followers mourning the outcome of the repeat presidential poll, boycotted by millions of his supporters, the vocabulary of the elusive call for the Kenyatta-Odinga dialogue has resurfaced. And the National Council of Churches of Kenya has suggested an entry point to the talks.
We recommend that Kenyans, through Parliament, amend the Constitution of Kenya 2010 to provide for an expansion of the executive, to provide for the president to appoint a prime minister and 2 deputies.
But Odinga's camp has rejected the suggested expansion of the executive or any attempts towards the formation of a coalition government, demanding that a fresh presidential election should be held in 90 days as a precondition for any such talks. NASA CEO Norman Magaya insisting the coalition will not file any presidential poll petition at the Supreme Court against Kenyatta's win, saying such a move would be tantamount to endorsing an election, which the coalition insists was a sham and never ought to have been held. An argument which the Jubilee camp has dismissed as hot air, insisting any talks with the opposition should only happen after Kenyatta's swearing in for a second term.
We are ready any day to engage in talks on only one subject, on modalities and framework of conducting a free, fair, credible election.
When Raila Odinga has an agenda that he thinks that he wants to discuss with the president's always been welcoming to discuss that issue, but not to go and dialogue with Raila Odinga on whether or not he won the elections or whether or not the elections took place.
But while the escalating political tension before the nullified August 8th election and the subsequent Odinga withdrawal from the repeat poll have intensified the standoff.
To the president and other leaders.
Kenyan Diaspora Alliance Chair Dr. Shemo Chwodo argues that the current stalemate could be the outburst of pent-up frustrations over historical injustices and perceived marginalization of opposition-allied regions.
Part of why both Jubilee and the opposition are getting the kind of crowds of following they get is because of that thinking of it's our time to eat.
Today, Honorable Raila Odinga, if he was a leader of the minority, he could have been like the leader of the opposition and be in the house, lead his troops, and form a shadow cabinet.
The current structure of government that we have, if we have free and fair election, you will have a system where those who lose will be happy to have lost fairly and wait for another 5 years.
Now, even as attempts at backroom talks intensify, the spotlight remains at the Supreme Court as the countdown to the Monday deadline for any likely petition continues. Mrimi Mwangi, KTN News in Nairobi.
Well, our reporter Francis Mtalaki now joins us live from Mombasa with an interview with the political analyst Mwaimuna Mwidao to just take a look at what is at stake for Kenya and is dialogue the only way out. Francis, over to you.
Well, thank you, Kisa. And as you have put it, that there seems to be different proposals from the political class, and those from the Jubilee side saying that any negotiation or the dialogue, for that matter, then it has to be after President Uhuru Kenyatta has been sworn in, and the opposition also saying that dialogue has to be in terms of organizing for another presidential election, possibly in the next 90 days. But I now want to bring Maimuna, who is a political analyst down here at the coast, probably to dissect this issue. Welcome to KT News, and let's begin by talking about this dialogue that the political class have been talking about. Are we in a political stalemate, or is this a core issue that has been existing and it has just exploded, given that we're in a political mood?
Mtalaki, the current situation is not new to our country. Every 5 years, we seem to come up with a problem that has been boiling over the 5 years. And the major issue here is what is called exclusion. Now, every Kenyan knows what exclusion means. Exclusion means you are not given an opportunity either to serve, you're not given an opportunity to be part of the development. And this has been exacerbated more by the tribal agenda in the country. That is a system in itself that either provides for others in a particular time and denies others. Now, as Kenyans, we've avoided discussing openly that we are generally tribal. We organize ourselves in a tribal manner. It seems everybody else is circling around trying to find a short-term solution to this problem. This problem does not need a short-term solution. It needs a very long-term solution. It needs proper dialogue by first identifying what is really ailing the Kenyan population in a country as such. So in my opinion, we need either to accept tribalism as it is and work around it and use it positively, or look for a solution that will be a permanent solution. Specifically in the political sector, there's a need to overhaul the systems to accommodate everybody else. For instance, the political parties are based on affiliations, and almost everybody votes tribally. So there's a need to overhaul that one. Similarly, the electoral system is not accommodating at all. It's also adding to the problem. For instance, the winner-takes-all system does not favor everybody. So the majority can be left out, and a minority could win based on their tribal numbers. So in my opinion, that is also a system that needs to be overhauled and have a system similar to the proportional representation where every vote counts. So we form governments based on the proportional number of votes garnered by each party, and everybody plays a part, rather than this system where almost half the country is left out of government.
But we've seen the religious class that's saying that there seems to be divided. In fact, those are saying that we should be having this proposal of having a prime minister's office, and the others are saying that there should be no such issue in terms of moving forward. Are the religious leaders also going differently in terms of what we should be happening and what sort of dialogue should be having, if any?
It's so obvious that the religious leaders are divided. And I want to say it very categorically that the religious leaders belong in the church and in the mosque, not in the political arena. If anything, they should not be the ones to give a solution. They should be the ones encouraging a more comfortable environment so that the political class can come to them and talk about the problems they have. It is not for the religious leaders to prescribe a solution for a political solution. Religious leaders, their mandate is in the religious area, and they should stick there because that's where they know best. Politics has no religion. It works in different mechanisms. So as far as I'm concerned, the religious leaders should organize themselves in such a way that they have the Jubilee and the NASA team come together, provide that platform, and let the politicians talk. Where there's a conflict, they can provide a good environment for discussion. And dialogue is important. They can play a neutral role. At the end of the day, when all is said and done, they can do the prayers and amen, we can all continue with life.
But one will argue if the political class come and sit together, then let's say, let's give an example of the NASA team comes on the table with their demands, Jubilee team comes on the table with their demands. Then how are we going to iron out those two issues?
For those who are experts in conflict resolution, they will tell you that when you have such teams together, you need to have a neutral arbitrator who will listen to both sides of the stories, look at the demands and see what is agreeable, what is not agreeable, and contentious is what they discuss. Now, it's a long process of conflict resolution, and I don't see a problem as long as the leaders are able to come on the table. That's the beginning. Once you start talking, then you don't go fighting. You continue talking until you find the last solution.
And the opposition, in one way or the other, have been agitating for the People's Assembly. And in your own, as a political analyst, what do you foresee in this?
The People's Assembly is the most peaceful way to agitate and have civil disobedience, as it's said. And as far as I'm concerned, as long as it's done peacefully, and that is a way of also addressing the issues to the bigger public, because normally when you have a dialogue between two groups, it might be a closed door kind of discussion. But with the People's Assembly, as long as it's peaceful, I don't see a problem to that. But then again, it will also disrupt the normal lifestyles of the Wananchi business, small businesses will be affected, because it has a tendency to overflow into a bigger conflict or demonstrations and rallies. But otherwise, if it is a forum that provides for discussion and dialogue, I don't see a problem to that. A lot of people will be able to come up and discuss issues openly. And that way, it eases the tension in the country.
I'd like to pick your mind on what the president said when he was being issued the certificate at Bomas, when he said that I will only engage after I have been sworn in and everything is in place.
I remember he said it before that I will only talk to Raila after the elections, of which unfortunately Raila Odinga boycotted. But again, he still said I will only talk to opposition after he's been duly elected as a president, and he will have a mandate as a president. I think prior to that, it will not make sense for him to sit with the opposition and discuss. But once he has a mandate, he has the ability to agree on certain terms, to give direction as a president of the republic. Prior to that, it may be difficult.
But now, on the opposition side, now, if he is sworn in, then it means he has the fully mandate of the president of this republic. And the opposition, and which has a massive support in this country, says that it does not recognize the president.
The opposition has a right to say whatever they want to say. But again, once the president is sworn in, legally he is the president of the Republic of Kenya until otherwise. So the president has the powers then to make certain decisions that he may not have if he's not sworn in. So ideally, maybe by virtue of being the president, he may be able to talk to the opposition and say, okay, let's talk. Since you do not recognize me, what do you want next? And one of their demands was 90 days of election. And within his powers as a president, then he may be able to change direction as to plan for the 90 days of election. I think prior to that, it may be difficult. Yeah.
Now, let's talk about what the political class and political parties drive as we head to when they are campaigning and currently what they're saying. You would notice that what you had said in terms of the tribal inclination, maybe what different should be done in terms of the political class and politicians in terms of selling their ideas, selling their points to the common Wananchi?
I think that they've done a good job until now in selling their agendas. But the underlying problem still persists. There are countries in this world where political parties are based on the linguistic groups. And this is an example of Belgium, where political parties are based on your linguistic groups. So the French have theirs, and the Dutch have theirs, and the other group too. So you affiliate based on your linguistic group, and you merge at the national level based on an issue. So if the French-speaking have an issue on health and the Dutch have an issue on health, they come together on that issue. But they have actually accommodated their differences in their linguistic groups. Now, similarly in Kenya, we are a tribal nation. We have not been able to overcome that. And we shy away from accepting the fact that we are indeed tribal. But there are some positive things we can use from a tribal agenda and agree that we can form our own parties and still merge at the national level based on an issue. Then we'll have taken care of this tribal agenda. We don't seem to realize that every other structure in this country is formed based on aligning a tribal agenda. The cabinet is formed by making sure that you have somebody from the coast, somebody from Western, somebody from Northeastern. Why is that the case? Not just about professionals, but it's about where you come from. Similarly, IBC was formed on the same basis. They were professionals, but they formed the basic agenda of tribal affiliation. So we are not addressing the real problem here. And it will recur every 5 years if we don't sort it out. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Maimuna. Well, Akisa, that was Ms. Maimuna talking to us, and he's saying that this is a problem that has been there, and we need a permanent solution, which is a long-term. Back to you, Akisa.
Well, and for now, it remains a matter of wait and see on the political landscape and what's happening currently. Francis Mtalaki there with political analyst Maimuna. So let's